One of the more important institutions that we have in an economy is money. Money allows us to facilitate trade. It allows us to engage in trade more easily. However, since we have paper money or fiat money, the ability to manipulate the money supply has changed over time. We no longer rely on gold or silver as money, we just use paper. So one of the problems that we have is that we have to be able to count the money that we have available. And there are different ways of doing that. Most of the ways we count money are preceded by the letter M. And then we go forward and look at different categories of money. The two most common ways to count money are called M1 and M2. M1 are the most liquid forms of money, the things that you can go out and immediately spend. Things like cash and coins and your checking account. Those things take virtually no time to spend. You can go out and spend them at a store, on the street, at a garage sale, online. You can spend them very, very easily. M2 are things that are just a little bit less liquid, things that it takes a little bit more time to get your hands on to go and spend. Things like your savings account. If you want to spend the money in your savings account, you actually have to take the time to go to the bank, or you have to take the time to go to a computer online to transfer the funds from savings to checking. And as such, it reduces the liquidity of your money. Another form of M2 would be something like a certificate of deposit, where you can withdraw the money, but you have to go to the bank to do so. So as things get less and less liquid, they fit into different categories, M3, M4, M5, and so on. But M1 and M2 are the most common ways that we count money. The entity that's charged with counting money in the United States is the Federal Reserve. And they can manipulate the money supply. And the reason they would do this is because the supply of money is directly related to how much we're able to purchase. So if you want to change aggregate demand, changing the money supply would be a very easy way to do that. Now, money creation isn't as simple as just saying, let's turn the printing presses on and start making money. We live in what's called a fractional reserve system, which means that there are rules that banks and financial institutions must play by in order to help facilitate the counting of money. And in addition, we want to be able to preserve people's faith in the money system. A fractional reserve system says that when you deposit money in a bank, the bank must hold a fraction of it in reserve. This means that there's a portion of the money you deposit in a bank that must be kept in the bank at all times. The rest of it, they are free to lend. And in the lending process, more money can be created. For example, let's say you find $100 on the ground. This is $100 in cash, and so it's part of the money supply. If you go deposit that money in a banking account, the money supply doesn't change. It just changes forms. So if you put it in your checking account, it goes from being cash to being checking. But the amount of money available hasn't changed at all. If the reserve requirement is 10%, that means that the bank must hold $10 of your $100 in reserve. Now, what they do with the rest of that money, that other $90, is up to them. They could go lend that out. And if they do so, what we see is that they're in the process of creating money. Let's say they make a loan to this second person comes along, they want to borrow some money. They make a loan of $90 to person number two. Person number two now has the money. Let's say they give it to them in cash. So there's $90 in cash in the economy now, and your $100 in checking accounts, which you have the right to withdraw whenever you want. It's in your checking account, so now we have an increase in the supply of money. We have $100 in checking, plus $90 in cash for person number two, which gives us a money supply of $190. Now, there hasn't been any new money printed, but the money supply has increased nonetheless. Now, let's say person number two takes that $90, deposits it in their own checking account, and then walks away. Now, their bank has the ability to lend 90% of that. So if they lend 90% of $90, they're going to make a loan for $81. Person number 3 comes along, they take out that loan, and that's given to them in cash. So now we have your $100 in your checking account, person number 2's $90 in their checking account, and person number 3's $81 in cash, which gives us a total for the economy of $271 in money supply, yet no new money has been printed. This is what happens in a fractional reserve system. This is one of the ways that money gets created, through the lending process. This is a very important way. Now for the Federal Reserve, if they want to count the money supply, they're going to have to pay attention to how much money is available in the economy through the lending process. And that's done through a tool that's called the money multiplier. The money multiplier allows the Fed to get an idea as to how much money could potentially be created through the depositing of money. The money multiplier is simply the inverse of the reserve ratio. So if our reserve ratio is 10%, we take 1 and divide it by 10%, and that tells us how much money could be created if lent out entirely. 1 divided by 0.1 is 10. So let's say that the Fed prints $1,000. The potential is there for $10,000 to be created. The initial printing of the 1,000 times the money multiplier. That's one of the tools that the Fed uses to try to keep track of how much money could be created in the economy.